Well, good morning everyone to our Climate and Environment Subcommittee on the 20th of August 2024. I would like to welcome members of the committee here, its staff who are supporting us, and Mr Brendan Irons, who is sitting at the top table here in standing in for Mr Jefferson. So I'll ask Councillor Hanford to read the council blessing, please.
Ia mātou e whiriwhiri ana i ngā take kei mua i o mātou aro, e pono ana mātou ka kaha tonu ki te whakapau mahara hua pai mo ngā hapore e mahi nei mātou. Me kaha hoki mātou katoa kia whaihua kia tōtika tā mātou mahi, a mā te maia te tiro whakamua me te hihiri ka taia, te arahi i roto i te kotahitanga me te aroha. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Hanford. So we're now moved on to item 3, which is apologies. So I've received one apology from Mr Olsen. I have a number of people online. They are Janet Holborough, our Mayor, Kim Tahiwi, Tim Sutton and Martin Halliday, who's not actually a member of this committee but a councillor. Michael Moore may be joining or maybe not, but he is on other council business today. So if we can accept the apologies, who would like to move? Thank you. Thank you. All those in favour? Passed. Okay, moving on to item 4, declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda. Are there any items on the agenda that people have a conflict of interest in or something they'd like to raise? No, thank you. Moving on to item 5, public speaking time. We have no public meeting, we have no public speaking time, so we'll now move on to item 6. We're moving through this very quickly. Item 6 is deputations, and we have none registered for that as either. So now we'll move on to item 7, which is members' business, 7.1. Are there any leaves of absence that would be like to be noted to this committee? Otherwise, you can direct them to the Mayor. Thank you. Moving on to B, are there any matters of an urgent nature? At this point in time, I have not had any brought to my attention. Thank you. So now we'll move on to item 8, which are the updates. So the first update is item 8.1, which is the waste minimisation update, zero waste education and waste levy grant. So if I could welcome Emma to come up and present, please. Thank you. Yeah, that one there. Thank you, Emma.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Emma, and I'm a Waste Minimisation Advisor, and I'm here to provide an update on waste minimisation education initiatives that we have been doing in the region and our waste levy grants that are currently open for applications. There you go. So starting with the waste minimisation education programs, I'm covering 4 key ones that we have been delivering and we have available in the district. The cloth nappies trial that is available to all ECEs in the region, the zero waste education program, which are lessons that are delivered at ECEs and schools in the region, waste-free period talks at colleges, and Paper for Trees, which are a planting and waste reduction initiative. I'll talk through all of them in the next slides, starting with the cloth nappies trial. So on average, one baby creates 700 kilos of nappies in only 1 year. And a nappy takes around 500 years to decompose. So if any of us had single-use nappies when we were growing up, they will be still in the planet after we're long gone from here. So that's why this is a great initiative that we decided to take in, a cloth nappies trial. What it is a pack of cloth nappies that is available to any ECE that is interested in the district, and training as well from Kate Meads, an expert on cloth nappy and reusables. And how does it work? So every year we do an outreach just before summer because it's the best time to trial cloth nappies. And if an ECE is interested, then we'll do a waste audit in their center to find out how much of their waste is cloth nappies. We usually find out there's a little bit of things that could be recycled and organic waste that could be composted. And then we produce a report on that waste. And then we book a date to have the expert to come to the ECE and train all staff on how to implement reusable cloth nappies in their center. After that, they have 3 months to trial the cloth nappies and learn from that. We'll always be available for questions or anything. And in the end of the 3 months, just before they're finished, we do another waste audit just to measure the impact of reusables in their waste, which is really helpful, not only for the environment and also financially for just investing on the cloth nappies initially and then using the same for a while. And then by the end of that, we produce a report with a comparison of before and after reusable nappies. And we chat with the center on their learnings on using that and how we can support. It's a really good education for the staff, but also for the parents, because they learn that if the ECE with 30 odd kids can use reusable nappies, they can implement that in their life as well, in their home. And if the center wants to run with cloth nappies moving forward, they can buy them or they can apply for the waste levy grants, and we can help them with funding on that, which is great. Yeah, so that's... Oh, yeah.
Just, do you approach all early childhood centres and kohangas?
Yes.
And ask them, yep.
Yes, all early child centres and kohangas, yes. Thank
Sorry,
you.
just one really brief question too. How many ECEs do you currently provide the trial to, or have you in the past?
So it's one ECE a year, because every year when Kate meets, it's around Kapiti area, she is the one that can provide the training. And we have done the trial so far with 2 ECs. And this year, Kate Meets is coming in September, so I'm looking for an ECE that is interested in running that. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Cooper.
The KPIs for the trial, does that include assessing how many people actually convert to nappy trials whilst the children are in nappies, or is it simply looking at the ECEs, the centres? Does it assess the conversion rate from
people?
Yeah, for people who...
From centres, yeah, just from centres.
So it doesn't look at the people who go to the centres?
Not the
who then
households,
convert.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're asking, and I'll check if I get it right, if we measure the impact on the households that use the centre?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, not that part. It's really with the centre, and this is more of a chat with the centre that sometimes they say that some parents have implemented in their household, but the pack is available for the centre. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Mr. Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, love the initiative. Question is, what is the cost of cloth nappy over the lifetime versus disposables?
I wouldn't have a number for you, but it's a great question, because that is an important thing that matters, I guess, to the EC sometimes, that it ends up being cheaper than buying the disposable nappies. So it's not only good for the environment, but also financially. And that's a great thing that we mentioned in the report. I wouldn't have a number, but it is more affordable to have reusable nappies. It's just the first barrier for ECs or parents to purchase those nappies without being sure if they will be able to implement it. And that's why we have this pack. We're breaking the barrier of purchasing the nappies to trial with the uncertainty if it will work or not.
Probably a great thing to mention, especially in the climate crisis at the moment.
Yes, absolutely, yes, with the cost of living. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Judge.
Thank you. Great initiative. I've got experience of putting 2 children through all of these. Is there a way of extending the trial so that parents can have their own trial pack? Because I know that there's, when I did it years ago, there was a number of different manufacturers, and some work better than others, and at different ages and stages, etc. And it's difficult. You've got to have the money and the perseverance to actually work through that and find which ones work for you and the system. So is there a way of extending that trial into people's houses if they're interested? And then is there a way of helping people overcome those initial upfront cost barriers to getting themselves out with however many they need to run it properly? Because absolutely it is much cheaper to run the reusable nappies than the disposables.
Yes.
But if you need to buy 8 of the things or 10 up front, that is not easy, and you need a decent washing machine, and you sort of get into the habit at home of how to use them. But once you do, it's a breeze, a messy breeze, but a breeze.
Absolutely, great question. So the question is if there is a way for us to make this available to households. We have in the past. So Kate Meads, she's also known in the whole Aotearoa as the nappies lady, reusable nappies lady, and now she does reusable and reducing waste in general. And we have covered for her online workshop for parents to learn how to how to implement reusable nappies. And also with that, they would get a starting pack of reusable nappies. So we have done that in the past, and we can do it again. And we also have a great initiative, which I'll be talking about soon, that has applied for the Waste Levy grants, and they have been successful last year. Kapiti Mana Multiples. They help multiple, so twins or more families with various things, but they apply to have reusable pack nappies, and they provide that to the families that want to trial that for a while. So yeah, these are 2 ways that we have been helping, one through a great community group, and one we have covered for costs for Kate Meads to provide that pack and online workshop. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Coe.
Thank you. I must be really, really old because my 3 babies had the big, the square nappies that you folded up. And that's the cheapest option of all, because the ones that are shaped like that are quite expensive. But look, I just want to know, you've talked about doing trials. Are those centres continuing to use cloth nappies or not? And what's the hold up in terms of making them more widely available to other centres?
Yes. So 2 centres have done the trial. The first one has implemented, and they're still use reusable nappies. It's been 3 years, I believe. The second one did not implement, and for them the barrier was the staff. Not all staff were on board, and that was the main barrier, I guess, for them to keep going, but they are considering for future still. And barriers to provide that to more ECEs. It's to do with when we can get the training with Kate Meads, and also the trial works best in summertime when it's easier to dry the cloth nappies as well. And the managing the pack, one pack, it's great and available for 1 day care. Many packs would be a bit more of managing. Yeah.
So I wouldn't have thought that training is very complicated. Are there not other people who could do the training if that's the barrier?
Not that I know of the moment, but we can look at that. Yes.
Because how hard can it be? Really, a lot of people use them with no training whatsoever. So
I think the training from Kate Meads is from her experience with ECEs.
Right.
So she has worked for years with ECEs that wanted to implement. Whilst if one of us, for example, tried to provide that training, we don't have that experience with ECEs. Would be more from a household perspective, but we can definitely look at that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Warwick.
Sorry, just another quick one. So you said you've been to 2 ECEs, is that right, in this?
Yes.
Yeah. And have they continued? Was it successful? Oh, sorry, I didn't listen.
No. Yes, all good. One has and one hasn't, because it was a challenge for the staff to keep that going. Yes.
So thank you, Emma, for just this very first part of your presentation. It's amazing how everyone's actually asked a question because it resonates with everyone, obviously.
Yes.
So I actually have my own question. So, this is a great initiative for a lot of reasons and going into these ECEs. But I suppose my question is this sort of by osmosis moving out into the community? Are other people through this work uptaking these cloth nappies, and have you got any ideas about what percentage of parents are actually converting, or is that not in your scope of work?
Yeah, we unfortunately don't have that number, and it's a little bit trickier to get that number from parents in a accurate way. The way that we know is just chatting with the ECs, the 2 ECs that have implemented, and they have mentioned that a lot of parents were interested, and some have implemented reusable nappies in their household. But we don't have a measure on that. It's a little bit trickier to check with each parent, I guess, but we can, see that.
So in terms of households, has anyone actually sort of said, what the barriers are for using these types of nappies rather than disposable?
Yes, so the barriers are costs, the initial costs that they would have to deal with with uncertainty if they would use for the 3 years or so, and time as well, because usually, especially for young babies, the parents are still quite scarce on time for anything else. Yes.
Thank you very much. And so I'll now let you continue on with the rest of your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So this is the Zero Waste Education Program. This is an award-winning program in Aotearoa. These are lessons that are delivered in all ECs and ECs and schools that the council covers for in Aotearoa to teach the kids about the link of natural resources, the things around them, and how this can become waste. So these lessons encourage the kids to investigate solutions for the waste problem we have, and empowers them to bring their learnings home to the grown-ups or their whānau at home. And we delivered that. We have that offered to all schools and ECs in the district. I have been trying to deliver that. Because I share my time with different tasks, we decided just recently to contract a zero waste education person to deliver in more schools, extend this. And will be really exciting to see how many schools can get the lessons now that we have an extra person. So far, we delivered in 11 schools and 4 daycares. And since we had this new person joining 3 months ago, he has already booked 3 schools in 3 months, which is much more than what I could do by myself, which is great. So if any schools are interested, again, we do an outreach and they will let us know that they are interested and we will book lessons with them. Yes.
Just one question in relation to that. So how many lessons make up the program? Is it sort of you go in for, a couple of hours per year, or is it kind of an ongoing thing that has a bit of a curriculum to it?
Yes, great question. So each year we'll have 2 units, which are in the slides, years 1 and 2, there are 2 units offered there. Each unit will have 4 lessons of 45 minutes. And basically we talked to the teachers and they gave us a timetable and we just booked the lessons. So 4 lessons could be in 4 weeks or in 2 weeks that we just come and deliver to the kids in that 45 minutes slot. And they are very interactive. and we even do cleanups in the school. We build a mini composting bin with the milk bottle, and yeah, it's really, really exciting for the kids. No worries. Yep. Good. Then we have our waste-free period talks that we deliver at colleges. So every year when Kate Meets is around here, we book one of our colleges to have a waste-free period talk. This is a really casual, fun talk from Kate Meets on the impact of disposable period products on our environment and introducing reusable period products to youth. We covered for Kate Meets time to deliver that workshop, and also we cover for pack of reusable products that she brings to the college, and each student can take one reusable product home to have try in their home. It's a great initiative to encourage reusables, but also to help with period poverty, which is when people have to miss school or miss work because they didn't have the means to buy period products. And we do every year, and we alternate the colleges to offer that to be able to offer that to all youth in the region. Yep. And then we have Paper for Trees. So this is, as I said, a planting and waste reduction initiative where any school or ECE can sign up for. And the idea is that they will already have a recycling system in place, but they will be encouraged to divert paper and cardboard from landfill by being rewarded with recycling that. So for every 2 cubic meters of paper recycling they do, they get one native plant in the end of the year that they can plant with the students. And for the last year, we had 29 schools and ECs registered, 96 tons of paper and cardboard that has been recycled, and 324 plants, native plants that have been planted. Yes.
Councillor Coe.
Yeah, look, before we move on to the grants, I just wanted to ask, you know, you've got 4 really good projects there, but are they just kind of random, or is there a logic? But, you know, how do you decide which projects will form part of your waste minimisation education strategy? That's the first question. And obviously these are all focused on the education sector, early childhood and schools. Are there any plans to do waste minimisation education in the wider community?
Great questions. How do we decide? There are a few different ways. Some of them have been decided regionally, so with the other councils in the Greater Wellington as our regional waste management minimization plan, WMMP. And some of them were regional as we gauge that the community is asking for a specific thing. And providing education to the wider community, there are definitely other initiatives that are not here. So, for example, workshops that I deliver on composting, because we know that 56% or 52% of what goes in the household bins could be compostable, and that's how we decided to do that. And any business or community group that emails us or calls here and asks for a talk, we will deliver a talk on what they want. So we have been to retirement villages to talk about recycling, reducing waste. We have been to Kapiti Women's Centre as well to talk about waste reduction. So it happens sometimes organically.
Right.
These groups or businesses come approach us, but also as well from what we learn on what we're sending to landfill, then we decide to do an initiative. We also have the Zero Waste Hub in Otahanga, and the Waste Forum that we just had recently, where we had lots of businesses come and community groups and learn about reducing construction and demolition waste from landfill.
So just one final question. Do you feel you have enough resources to do all the things that need to be done in this area? The waste minimisation education. Are you struggling to keep up with the, with the need, if you like?
It's a great question. I think we have the resources we need, but I think it's quite common in the waste space to have a lot of different things that you want to deliver, but you have to prioritize. But yeah, I feel like we do have.
You're doing okay.
Good resources.
I think Mr. Mellon would like to make some comments. Oh no,
Yeah,
he's
sure.
happy now. Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, I was going to ask a similar question as to the sort of wider community education space, but yeah, thanks Liz and thanks for the answer, Emma. This is kind of a very specific question to Paper for Trees. So I helped to coordinate it when I was at KC, and we had different student officers who would go around and audit the different bins across all the different English classes predominantly. But one of the big issues that we had was on Fridays, we had to load up essentially a couple of teachers' cars with all the bins to take them to Otahanga because the bins weren't collected from the school. So I just wanted to check whether that's now changed, because that was a big job, trying to find a teacher with a car big enough to pile all the recycling bins into to then get it to the transfer station. So I just wanted to check where that was at.
Yes, and I have a question back to you. So what was the reason for the bins not to be collected? Was there no recycling collection in the school? It had to be, right. Yes, so at the moment it is up for the school to sign up with a recycling collection. So if they have that, then they will be collected. But I will actually check with the program as well if they are offering something different. It's not a recycling program, but an encouragement to recycle. And I can imagine that some schools may not have the collection, and that has to happen.
And that was also a big long conversation about trying to find the best way to get that provided for the school, some sort of recycling. So that might even be, I don't know if you were looking to sort of broaden the conversation with schools beyond paper recycling to help them kind of broker connections with different people who could do their recycling as a whole, because that spurred a lot of conversation about how complicated it would be to try and find a provider. But I mean, we obviously have relationships, right? So I wonder if that would be something you could talk with schools about as well.
Yeah,
Mr. Mellon.
Yeah, I think it might be maybe an opportunity for the schools to get into the waste levy grants process. There's there's an established structure there for applying for grants. No reason why. I mean, we have done worm farms and all sorts of other things for schools through that mechanism, and that fund has increased with the increased waste levy now that's been charged. So certainly something we could go back to the colleges with and suggest they maybe look to put something in there in terms of application for collections or something to help facilitate this.
So I know that Mr. Black has got some questions, but I've got a question as well. So has there been any, rather than sending it to the recycling centre, has there been any thoughts about the schools composting the cardboard themselves? Because obviously a lot of schools have their own gardens and they probably buy in mulch and stuff like that. So it's looking at different ways of solving the problem, but also too, I think, it probably would take a little bit of setting up, but it adds to the knowledge of the students. It extends the, I suppose, showing the process of recycling as well.
Yes, 100%. A lot of schools, as Sean mentioned, have applied for composting bins through the waste levy grants. And those schools, they actually send me updates of the kids gathering leaves or even paper and cardboard and using that in the compost bin. So for the schools that have the garden and have decided to compost, this is a great idea as well. But for some schools, they may not have someone that can help with the compost bin, and then they sign up to this great initiative. Yes.
So thank you. Mr. Black.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you for this. My question is around online resources. All this information that we're going out and teaching the kids programs, how do we make that more continuous? Is there something which we can actually make accessible to them? Maybe make some, engage in some video games they can play specifically around recycling and composting. And how do we make this work without our initiative having to drive it each time?
Great question. If we're talking about schools, I do know we have EnviroSchools, which is really helpful. Amanda, who is our EnviroSchools person, works with the teachers to keep that going, not just on a waste reduction perspective, but on a sustainability perspective. From the initiatives that I have just presented, the waste-free period sessions, after Kate Meets comes and delivers the workshop, she also sends an online video with more explanation about reusable products. And yeah, I think these are the main things. We also work with our comms team to continuously use our platforms, Facebook newsletters, to educate members of the public on recycling, composting, reusing. We have other initiatives that work with that as well. Love Food, Hate Waste. We have a membership that they always send us resources, and then we send that as well in our platforms to educate the members of the public on reducing food waste. So a few different things in place.
Cool. Do we measure that so we know that the actual communities are getting that information, or are there other ways we can explore to get information to our communities?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Is there a good uptake? Do we monitor and measure the uptake, and have we got the right mechanisms to get to the grassroots community?
So the uptake of each initiative will be measured differently, I guess. So for example, one that I mentioned, Love Food, Hate Waste, a survey is sent after each campaign to understand from people that participated what was the impact on reducing waste. Our Love Your Compost program, for example, that I deliver workshops to teach people to compost, and we have vouchers for people to buy composting systems. We also have a follow-up survey to measure the impact on their waste. So we have some mechanisms on, but they are each one of them are different for each initiative, as they are very specific.
Awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So that has ended the question. Oh, yes, she does. Thank you. Morning, Janet. How are you, Councillor?
Good morning. Good, thanks. Thanks for these projects. They're absolutely wonderful. One area I wanted to ask about to follow up from Councillor Coe's question was, do we do work in our retirement facilities at all? That would be rich pickings, I would think, for waste minimisation. It was a general question. And then a couple of specific questions about the waste-free periods. Those products don't come without a risk. The risk is minimal, but the outcome can be severe. Are we satisfied that we're comfortable with encouraging the use when there is that element of risk there? And around that, are we part of a regional program, or are we doing this just locally? And also, do the bathrooms at the colleges, do we make sure that they support the use of these products? There's 3 questions there.
3 questions, yes. So the first question is on retirement villages. So yes, we do work with retirement villages in different ways. We have, first of all, Organic Wealth as a community group that produces, that helps with training and also composting, and they have been working with a lot of retirement villages on that, on composting. From my side, I do get a lot of emails coming from retirement villages asking for either come and be a part of their meeting and help with reducing waste, composting, and I guess the most popular is recycling right. And we have done quite a few talks in retirement villages on recycling education. So we do have that going, and it's mostly coming from retirement villages. They have our contact and they ask us for that. Hopefully that answers your question for the
Great.
first question.
And
Good. The waste-free period, I had a question back on the risk. What would be the risk that you're touching on for the waste-free period products? Is it the risk of using the products?
Yes. Yeah, in terms of there's low rates, but they can cause toxemia and infection.
Oh, yes, of course. So it is the same risk as we also have risks with the single-use products on the ones that are internal for that. So the risk is not much of a difference for those two. And we don't just offer the internal products, we also offer pads. And we make it clear, Kate Meets, who delivers the workshop, does mention that in the beginning of the workshop. And she also makes it clear that it's for the students to use what they feel more comfortable with. And yeah, but the risk is actually in a way similar to the single-use product as well for the reusables. And the question on the bathrooms, all the colleges have different facilities, and not all of them will have the main support for the reusable products would be possibly a private bathroom where people would feel comfortable washing the products. So not all of them have that, but they can still use it at colleges because you can still just, I'll get really specific, just use the paper to clean the reusable
That's all right,
products.
as long
Yeah.
as we're covering it off.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
No worries.
Brilliant work.
So thank you, Emma, for a very, very interesting update. And obviously, this committee has a lot of interest in this, and I suppose also it's the work that is being done out in the community to actually make a real difference. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for coming along and presenting to us today.
Thank you. I have the waste levy grants as well. Yes. A little bit more, almost done.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. Yep.
That's all right. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the waste levy grants. We have waste levy grants open at the moment. These are grants that are an opportunity for amazing community groups and businesses in our region that have a great idea to reduce waste, become more circular, and don't have the funding, and they can apply for that. The grants will close on 8th of September. They are fully funded from the waste levy from MFE. And we have two categories, community projects and business waste reduction projects. So I'll start talking about community projects. We have a funding pool of 30,000 for all community projects in the area. And we encourage projects that have community participation and educate the community on reducing waste, on moving up on the waste hierarchy, benefit the Kapiti Coast community, and lead to long-term waste minimization action and behavior change. I have one example of a previous applicant, Kapiti Mana Multiples, which I mentioned before. This group supports families with multiples, twins or more, with various things, and they applied for reusable nappies. They have been successful. And now they are offering these packs and their knowledge to help households with reusable nappies. They have distributed 7 packs so far since January this year. And there's a little quote there from one of the families saying that it's really helpful because it was daunting to started for twins, and that it's helpful even if they use reusable nappies sometimes, it still reduces waste for their family. Then we have our business waste levy grants. This is a funding pool of 20,000 to fund up to 50% of business waste reduction projects, waste minimization projects to business that will implement measures that will lead to long-term and measurable minimization of waste from their operations. We prioritize organic waste because we are sending a lot of that to landfill, and that releases methane, which is a really powerful greenhouse gas that contributes to climate change, construction and demolition, because a lot of what we send to landfill as a region is construction and demolition, and then any projects that fill a gap with the current waste services in Kapiti. And then I have an example here again from a previous winner, the roastery. They have applied for an expansion of their reusable coffee beans jar in their cafe. So they had started selling coffee beans in a glass jar, but they wanted to offer more. So they have applied for the grants and they have been successful, and now they offer a lot of that, where people basically come, they buy their coffee beans, and once they're done with that, they return the empty glass jar and they get a new one full of beans for a lower cost from what they initially paid, because they paid for the jar in the first time. And that's really good initiative because it's bringing circular economy to our region. And yeah, we would love to see more of this.
So thank you, Emma. Councillor Coe.
I just wondered if you are partnering with the Chamber of Commerce to promote the business grants. And also, we now have two business associations that are relatively new. We have the Otaki Tahoro Business Association and the Waikanai Business Association. And both of those have regular meetings, like monthly meetings, I think. But I would have thought all three, the Chamber and those two business associations, would be really good partners to help promote the grants. So I don't know if you do that already, do you? Or
I think Chris wants to comment on that.
okay.
I think just to note that I think there's an opportunity for the team to come to our Sustainable Business Network, which all of those people you've just mentioned also come to. But it's an existing network where we're bringing different parts of our business community together to talk about all things sustainability and to join that conversation up. Previously, we have been doing that, but I think there's an opportunity to maybe think about whether we can showcase that at one of our upcoming meetings.
But also the wider community, not just the sustainable business.
I think everybody's welcome to come to that session. So those who want to get involved are coming to that.
Yes.
And so it's actually a forum that the Chamber and Council have been working on together, which is why I'm proposing that might be the best mechanism. So it kills several birds with one stone, essentially. But we'll connect and make sure that we can maybe focus that for our next hui.
Great. Yes, that would be great. One other way that we promote that to businesses is our platform from Economic Development Team, P-Talk. So they have a newsletter and a great membership database that they send the newsletter to, and they always promote the waste levy grants to businesses on that.
Thank you, Emma. So we'll now move on to Mr. Black.
I was just wondering about the funds themselves. I mean, MFE does provide them. I'm just wondering, how oversubscribed are they, and do we need more funds for community projects?
Last year we have been oversubscribed, but we have increased as much as we could within the policy for community and business. Yeah, there's a limit in the policy, and we have increased as much as we could. But yeah, it's a good problem to have them oversubscribed. It means that we have a lot of great initiatives that are interested.
Which areas are they oversubscribed, and what trends do you find the grants aligning with?
I would say it varies every year. Yeah, it varies. It's hard to give you a category. So community grants, we have lots of schools applying for, and small community groups. While businesses, we have businesses that are collecting food scraps food scraps, or hospitality, things like that. So I wouldn't say there's a specific category that is oversubscribing. And when we decide on the grants, we can also partially fund some of them, and that helps as well with the oversubscription.
Thank you.
So thank you, Emma. I suppose my view in relation to these levy grants is that there are a lot of businesses out there and community groups who would like to improve their sustainability, but without this type of funding, they're not actually able to do that. So it's a great initiative, and I once again I'll thank you for this very interesting update. Thank you. So if we look at the recommendations, recommendation A, that we note the update provided for this report. Have a mover for that? Seconder? All those in favour? Pass. Thank you. Thank you very much again. Thank you. And to the team. Okay, so now we're going to move on to item 8.3, which is the Access and Transport Asset Management Plan and associated funding. So Rashar, would you like to come forward and bring any other staff members if you'd like to bring forward as well, please? So this is on page 19 of our agenda. Welcome.
Morning all.
Good morning.
My name is Richard. I'm the Excellent Transport Manager. Sean is my manager. And Mark is here with me. Mark is a team leader for asset management in our team. And Vijay is also here. He's the team leader for planning. Right, so today actually we are here to talk about and just update the climate about our excellent transport activity management plan.
Sorry, just very briefly interrupt. We'll share there. I don't know if I missed the conversation about the asset management plan, activity management plan that was sent out a bit late for the meeting. We were looking at getting that endorsed today, but I think because of that short period of time, whether everyone's had a decent chance to have a look at it, we are more than happy just to leave that on the table, and we can come back either to the next meeting and cover that if people have questions or have a feeling they haven't had enough time to look at that in detail. Then absolutely we can do that. And apologies, it should have gone out with the agenda, but it didn't, so it went out.
And this mainly apologies from my side. It's not Sean's, it's me. I was a bit late. I was thinking it had gone through, but didn't. So, yeah.
Can I just make a quick comment? Yes. Sorry.
Councillor Coe, yes.
Yeah. Look, I guess I was struggling to understand why this paper was coming to this committee in its entirety. I can see the link between some of these things and climate and environment, but I would have thought that really the focus of this committee is just on the climate impact information, and I'm just wondering if that could be extracted out somehow so that we can see the items that are relevant to climate as opposed to endorsing the whole, the plan in its entirety, the whole 272 pages, because to me that's, a bit beyond the scope of this committee. I just wonder if you have a response to that.
Mr. Mullen.
Certainly the intention was to also bring that plan to Strategy, Ops and Finance in its entirety from this meeting. But also, I understood the scope of this committee had been expanded to incorporate transport. I wasn't aware maybe that the
Well, I don't know
specifics in
whether it
terms of
has.
that. Certainly, there's a discussion that's been had about that. So that was the
Yes.
intent, really, to bring it here because of that.
It's certainly something I've been pushing
Yeah.
for, but I don't know whether it's formally happened. Has it?
No, the governance structure hadn't been.
Saying that there have been conversations around, so did you like to make some comment, Janet, or not? Put you on the spot?
Yeah.
Yes, she does. Thank you.
I think it needs to be on this committee, but
Yeah. So the updates, I think the wording is updates on regional transport matters, sits in both the Climate and Environment Subcommittee and the Social Sustainability Committee, with kind of on the understanding that there can be social impacts or environmental impacts of transport activities. And I guess the idea is to bring the information and for the committee to respond to any elements that are climate or environment related. So I would think that a way forward with this one might be to see the presentation today and let the committee take the document away and come back with any environmental or climate related points or questions, and that could even happen offline before the next social soft committee. So yeah, it is transport now does sit in the delegations of the subcommittees, just so I clarify that.
okay. I don't think anybody's aware of that.
Yeah, well, we all
talked about
moved.
it,
Well, it came through a council meeting and we all approved it. So
did we? I don't recall that. Anyway, oh well, I must have not been here.
I think that was the governance document we signed at the beginning of the triennium.
yeah, it might have happened while some councillors were on leave. I don't know, but
Yeah, it wasn't
certainly it was approved by councillors.
sure. Yeah. Anyway,
So I suppose I think it's good that we're having this conversation, and good that we have this committee has some dedication to transport, because like many other activities in our community, they all have interactions in various ways, and so there will be and we know that transport is one of the highest emitters of pollution in our district, and I think having an oversight, having a view of the big picture as well as some of the drivers is actually really important. And I think if you actually look at some of the points that are going to be discussed today, they actually do come under our area of interest. So I will continue with, I'll take Janet's suggestion and we'll go through our presentation. And when we get to the end of that, we'll have a conversation about how we look at the actual plan. Thank you. Thank you, Bashir.
Cool, thank you. So this is actually our agenda. We're going to talk about the government. Oh, sorry. We're going to talk about government policy statement, the working in cycleway network plan, about the resilience, talk about the geohazard register, and then we talk about the emissions monitoring, chip seal versus asphalt, roading maintenance contracts, broader outcomes, and then activity management plan highlights and sign off. So sign off is not going to happen today, as Sean mentioned earlier.
Just a question. There's quite a few different areas here. Would you welcome questions throughout your presentation, or would you rather wait till the end?
To the end, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So this actually slide shows two government policy statements. The first one was not, it was just in the draft form, and it was proposed in August 23, which never actually got finalized. And the National actually has produced, which is the final government policy statement in June 2024. So the government policy statement has released the final government policy on land transport 2024. GPS 2024 guides how funding for land transport will be invested and comes into effect from 1st of July 24. It includes 22 billion of funding to be invested into the transport network over the next 3 years. So how you can actually see on this slide here, the previous government had a bit of different focus, and this government has actually main focus is on the roads movement. You can see youths over there. The good thing actually is the roads were in the previous GPS as well, and in this too. So in this new GPS, the government actually is proposed to invest around $640 million more compared to the previous government. Walking cycleway plan review. So those who were in the previous workshop on last Thursday would have seen Fraser talking in more detail about this. So we are reviewing the former strategic network plan, 10 years forward works program, 24-25 year, producing a new walking and cycling network plan for next 10 years, which is embedded in the AMP and LTP process. From here, I will hand over to Mark.
Thank you, Richie. As we put this set of slides together, we were trying to find the key changes to our activity management plan from the past one. It's a continuous program, and identifying the focus areas that make those differences. The resilience slide, which we're going to go through the next couple of slides, is about climate change. It's about adaptation, mitigation, and leadership. The geohazard register is something we've never had before. If you look at the way we look after our bridge structures, we've got a list of all our bridges. We go to an expert, they tell us what's going on, we budget accordingly, and we make sure they're safe for our community. But geohazard registers, where the river cuts round and rips out a bit of the shoulder, and next thing our road falls in and we get closures, or it could be overslips, the climate, inundation, those sort of risks. We don't have a list of them. So in this training, we're going to reach out to experts in this field, geotechnical experts, and build a list of those sites so we know what they are, so we can start budgeting and start building up a program of works to make our network stronger, so as we have more larger storms into the future, our network is robust and ready for that. Which slide, that one?
I can do it for you.
However, in this 3-year block, we have identified 2 significant projects. If you remember back to December 21 or 22, Liz? It was a couple of years ago. We had that significant storm right across our network, and one community in particular bore the brunt of that, Te Horo Beach. They were unable to come in or out of their community for about 3 days, and we see that as a risk going forward. And we're going to lift the road for about if you see the photo on the bottom left-hand side, that was the section impacted, lift the road up about 400 millimetres.
You should have used the photo of me looking through the cloud.
Couldn't see Liz. Sorry, I don't have a photo of the second one. Rangawati
Through the
Bridge.
chair, please.
Thank you, Liz. Rangawati Bridge. That road is at risk of closure also when the Waitāhu Valley comes up and tears out the end of the abutment. So we're going to strengthen that river protection up next to the bridge and make it more resilient. Those are the kind of projects this resilience register is wanting to build for our future. Climate change leadership is something we're trying to do a bit better at as we continue our journey in access and transport, and understanding the emissions that our activity are causing, not just within the council, where our how many? We've got 12 people in our team. Driving around in cars probably aren't the major impact, but when we look at what we build from our, thank you, Sean, we've got a ute as well, so when we look at what our access and transport team ask to be done for us, what our contractors do, when you look at the volumes of trucks, the volumes of materials where the work involves, it's significant. It's a major amount of work. And we don't really know how much. So our emissions monitoring program is stepping beyond what our team and council do to what our activity causes. We've been working for the last 18 months with our road maintenance contractor and worked out our method to do that. And thank you. And got that understood. And our road maintenance contract and our other long-term contracts going forward is getting written into the contract to measure and report regularly, and that will create the conversations about how we can change things we do and reduce those emissions going forward. Something I love, bit of bitumen. Love the smell of it. In our business case section of resurfacing, we talk about chip seal and asphalt in length. What's really quite subtle in there is the financial impact of the assumptions we're making in that. We're making the assumption that when we build the long-term Forward Works program up of where these asphalt and chip seal sites will go, what those surfacings will be. And when you aggregate those up into the full program, we build, that's how our financial request comes about. Chip seal, for those who aren't really familiar with it, on the left-hand side image is you've poured the bitumen on the road, drop the stones on, roll it in, and for about $12.50 we get a chip seal road. Versus asphalt, where you come in with lots of asphalt from a product made off-site, they pour it through the paver and knock it down. We get that beautiful, smooth, $60 per metre squared road that we all love to ride our bikes on and feels nicer. So there's a significant cost impact on that. So as we decide which road should we chip seal and which we asphalt, we start off with quite a simple flowchart. When the road needs surfacing, does this section of road have a high amenity value? And by that we mean it's like a main street or a high use activity street. It could be in front of a school where there's a lot of other things going on. Or is it not? Our residential streets don't actually have that level of need from a amenity perspective, and certainly our rural roads have a lower level again. If they do have that need, let's asphalt it and make it fit for purpose for that use. If not, then we ask the second question, does it have a high stress factor on the site? Why that? When a truck turns and screws across in an intersection, or you brake really hard, are we tearing and pulling? Do we need a strong surfacing? And if so, then we'll go asphalt as well. And that's our roundabouts, big intersections, coming up to the traffic lights, those sort of sites. If it's neither of those, let's chip seal it. Just running through a couple of examples just to keep it ahead in the game. We're out into an intersection with the big trucks peeling around there, heading down to the transfer station. No, it doesn't have a high amenity value, but it does have a high stress factor, so asphalt is the correct surface. Looking into Raumati Main Street, it's got quite a low stress factor, but the amenity value, hey, this is a main street for us. We need to make it feel fit for purpose, people walking across and using it, and asphalt is how we program that into the future. This next one's a bit more interesting. This is a residential street. It's just around the corner from us. It's currently an asphalt site. When our development happens, our developers want to get the best yield off those sections, and often to make it get that best value for them, they put asphalt down as the surfacing. And it feels good, and it lasts about 25, maybe 30 years, but we're coming to the beginning of some of these sites needing to be resurfaced for the first time. So when we look back in time, we've never actually had to deal with this, but going forward, we will. And for some of these sites, and this one on Harry Shores is an example, and it's not up for surfacing next year. It's a few years away. We look at our decision-making process, and it doesn't have a high amenity value, nor does it have a high stress factor, and we were looking at chip sealing sites like this. So when we built our program up, we've been making these hard decisions. Benefits of limiting asphalt where it's needed is about affordability. NZTA funding, for those that aren't aware, we get a wonderful subsidy from Waka Kotahi at NZTA of 51%. So half of the cost of our resurfacing program is borne by our ratepayers, the other half is by our taxpayers. NZTA are not willing to fund where we want to put asphalt, but they are willing to fund where we need to put it. The part of this is this hard decisions we're talking about are already typical in our other local authorities, Auckland, Tauranga, Christchurch. They've been grappling with this for a number of years, and this is the way it has become normal for our local authorities to behave. The negatives. Some of our asphalt sites will in future be chip seal, and the expected negative response from residents will be heard in social media and I suspect directly to us, both as officers and as council members. The other, that's significant, that's something we're going to need to work our way through. The other one is about chip seal is a little bit noisier and it's harsher. So when you ride your bike, it feels nice to be on the asphalt. When you drive your car, it's not as noisy on a asphalt. So we're going to be a little bit noisier on the chip seals. Right, that's the end of that section. Anything add on?
Yeah, I just you know, as Mark's mentioned, we haven't really dealt with a lot of this because of the age of the network that we have. But this is going to be even the minor bits and pieces of work we do at the moment, where we're putting chip seal down, we get a lot of negative response in terms of noise, and especially if even if it had an older chip seal surface that has basically become smoother than it would have been when you first put it in. So people often assume it is asphalt, and it's often not, and we're putting chip seal back on those roads. But this is just to start that conversation. This is going to be, like I say, it's 4 to 5 times the cost.
Yep.
Not subsidised by NZTA if you can't justify the fact that you're replacing the right material onto that section of road. So, you know, if council wanted to do more of asphalt rather than chip seal that wasn't necessarily wanted, then that's a conversation about additional funding coming that isn't going to be funded by NZTA, and a significant number when you start looking at what we spend a year. At the moment, we're spending 1.8 million dollars a year in terms of reseal budget, and that ramps up because our network's getting bigger, costs are increasing, so it's a $2 million a year conversation, and, you know, over the life of the LTP. Again, it's a significant amount of cost, so just putting that context there.
Yeah, I did that calculation to get it a bit more accuracy rather than our gut feel. It was actually pretty close, Sean. Well done. We've spent in this 3 years 2.7 million on resurfacing. That's chip seal plus asphalt. If we were to, the change we're moving into is about 1 kilometre of asphalt moving into chip seal in the future. Not this year or next year. Not even probably this 3 years, but beyond that, we're starting to move into that environment. So that increases the whole cost from 2.7 to 3.3. So it's not that significant. However, when you look at how much council is paying for that, we are paying 1.35 million. And if we move into, if we don't change, we just keep asphalting what we've done, it would move up to 1.95. So that's half again the cost of resurfacing for that small amount of exercise. Right, moving on. Giving a quick update on where our contracts are. We've currently got 3 contracts: road maintenance, which has got asphalt and road marking inside it. We have a chip seal contract and a road and a streetlight contract. The chip seal contract is currently out for tender at this time. We'll be closing in a few weeks' time, and we need to. A couple of little dots fallen off the tender process, fell off the slide. They were sitting on me in front of me. We need to get that contract up and running, so we're going to be bringing something to council straight after Christmas for, no, that one's going to be September, isn't it? September for acceptance, and they will be getting into work this season on that contract. The road maintenance contracts will be out to tender before Christmas. We'll close it so that the contractors don't have to work through the Christmas break, and they'll come to Council's first meeting up after Christmas, starting 1st of July. Streetlights will come to tender. We're looking at potentially working with Horowhenua to increase the scale of that contract as across the boundary joint contract. Then asphalt and road marking have been separated out, and they'll come to tender after that. They don't need to start on 1st of July. Reason for separating those is currently our smaller contracts, and these contractors, and smaller, I'm meaning not tier one, not sort of a couple of thousand people across New Zealand contractors. This is our couple of hundred people in the region type contractors. They're not able to really tender and win work directly with us with the current model that we've got. So the chip seal gives that opportunity. Asphalt contractors will be able to tender for that chunk of work, and we can build that relationship directly with the supplier rather than having them as a subcontractor to a main head contractor. So we've seen that as a really good opportunity, and similarly road marking. Well, there's the little dots I was looking for. When we bring these contracts to tender, broader outcomes are a focus for us, and we have adopted the Kapiti Coast District Council guide for broader outcomes, stimulating local employment, and what when we're just talking about the asphalt and road marking being separated out, not bundling everything together, that is about getting our tier 2 contractors that opportunity, encouraging our tier 1s to have subcontractors, right, so we can get all of our contractors an opportunity to get into this. Reducing the carbon emissions, we've talked a little bit about that, mitigating climate change, reducing waste to landfill. That will be one of our hard questions we're asking our tenderers. How are you going to do this? And we're going to value that within that tender evaluation process. Improving supply diversity. One of our focuses where we will ask our tenderers, how are you going to enable our people in Kapiti to work in this kind of environment? I'm blasting through this because I've got a heap of slides. Just to give a quick scale of how big is our workload, just to get a feel for it, 441 kilometres of road as we go into this 3-year block of work. It was only 400 3 years ago. With the old state highway, the M2PP section coming through Parapumu Waikanai, now handed over, the extension of roads on the Peka Peka to Otaki length, that was another 9 kilometres up there, and subdivision that has occurred in this 3 years, we've now increased by 10%. So that was a significant cost impact to our request. If we've got 10% more roads, and these are big roads, these are the arterials that typically we need a bit more money to be able to maintain them. So that was part of the increase in costs. Over 5,000 street lights, 400 kilometres of footpath and pathways. Nearly as much road we can walk on and cycle on. That's really cool stuff. And Fraser down the back there, loving the work he's doing on that walking cycling plan, so that we have that focus on how we're maintaining those in the future. Over 265 retaining walls across our network. We never see those, but they're hidden under there. We've got lots of different assets that we might not think about that are included in here. Over 5,000 sumps. So we've been really working hard on cleaning our channels and our sumps, and we're seeing it over the weekend. We just had a bit of a rainstorm event. Wasn't as bad as other areas. Well, I think we had two call-outs. Wow, that's because we're working hard at maintaining the assets to get the best out of them. One of the dubious ones, statistics in here, 12 sets of traffic lights. But as our roads increase in capacity, the need for those traffic lights to manage our intersections safely is important. As we developed our activity management plan, understanding what are we trying to do, what are those problem statements, there is no change on these other than that real halo of climate change adaptation that sits behind all of these. These are the same problem statements that we had 3 years ago, and they're still very applicable, so they have been kept there. That we need to keep our network fit for purpose. And that really aligns well with both the Labor government and the National Coalition government policy statements. Resilience for climate change, we've talked a bit about that. Demographic change and accessibility. We know our network looks after a wide variety of people, and making sure we've got that little focus and understanding that we've got an older population, thinking about how they're moving around, that our population is growing and how that is changing. That was reflected in our activity management plan. Connectivity, not just for our roads, but our pathways. How do people move around? How do our freight come in and out of our network? Those sort of questions are key to it. And not last, but certainly not least, road safety. We are still having around about 10, 11 serious or fatal crashes on our network each year. So working hard at reducing those will always be a key focus for us. Huge challenge as we jumped into this, developing our activity management plan this time, was we were in the grasp of a significant inflation wave. These are not the inflation figures. These are our industry access and transport roading figures that were released for the cost increases. Over 14% increase in 1 year, and over that 3-year block, about 26% increase in costs. So for that 26%, we don't get any more value, anything. We get the same amount of outcome for that increase in cost. When we talk to our peers across the Wellington region, when contracts were coming up for tender, 20 to 60% increase in costs were normal. So in our activity plan, we have put that inflation into our forward works programming. One thing that hasn't been constant on our network is our pavement and surfacing condition. We've got two bits of evidence here. One is on the left-hand side, the last 10 years, our potholes. People like talking about potholes, and actually it's quite a good measure. This year I think we'll be down because it's a bit drier, but that trend over time, it's a gentle increase year on year on year. If we don't change what we're doing, we'll see that continue. I looked at another network that had the same graph, and it was like a ski jump. Our journey is not as hard as theirs, but if we don't deal with this, we're going to end up on a ski jump. The second on the right-hand side is the smooth travel exposure. So it's 100% perfect because it's absolutely smooth. So as it decreases, you're getting rougher rides across the network, and you can see over the last 5-6 years, it's been gently decreasing. This year was 85. We don't have that statistic up on here, but it was an 85. So we sort of static a little bit, but certainly over that trend over the 6 years suggests that we have decreased. Our strategy is not to take it back to what we were 10 years ago. We're not going to reduce the number of potholes per year. Our strategy is to change from letting it get worse, stretching our asset, to holding. Let's hold the level of service where we are. We're going to need to do more work to hold it where we are as we go forward. So our next slide shows our resurfacing. Chip seal only, does not include asphalt. So over the last 15 years, the blue on the left-hand side is what the lengths we have done. Certainly after the global financial crisis, there was a message coming strongly from NZTA that we don't need to do as much as we've done in the past. We can stretch this asset out a bit further, and by not topping our amount we're asking for up each triennium as much as we probably should have, effectively we've reduced a significant amount down to about 11, 12 kilometres per year. And if you do your math on that, for a 440 kilometre network, that's a chip seal every 40, 35 years. Well, we know they don't last that long, but we do know we can get about 20 years on average. So we're moving back up to sitting over 20 kilometres this year. We've looked at what we need to do in this next 3 years, and we're taking the first big chunk step up to 16.5 kilometres, and in 3 years' time we're going to take another step up to correct that amount of surfacing. Same thing goes with our road maintenance. The amount of money we're asking in OPEX to be able to get in and repair the road, it's a step up. And in the last 6-7 years, we had done no rehabilitation, no full rebuilds The first one of those got done in Waitū Valley. We've got more work to do in that space in this 3 years, and we'll continue to invest beyond that. So when you bring all those things together, the next 2 years look really high, and then we sort of flatten off and with a gentle increase into the future. The blue down the bottom is OPEX. That's a bit of a step from what we've done in the past, then a gentle increase, which is to do with growth and expected inflation into the future. The orange is renewals, CapEx renewal, where something's worn out, let's replace it. And again, it's a gentle increase into the future with a couple of steps with their resurfacing. But there's one big step in year 2. That's the 2 Kapiti culverts down at Parapamu Beach. There's 2 large culverts that are going to be about $4 million, $5 million to replace. So they're sitting in there. And the grey on the top, that's our upgrade. That's the increase level to increase our level of service, to buy new things that we haven't had in the past. And there's a couple of big bumps in there. One is that's where we fund our Blue Bluff repairs that we've talked about earlier to get that road up and running up to Otaki Forks. And the other is a significant chunk of investment from our council for the Peka Peka to Otaki revocation. That's through Otaki Township itself, and NZTA are putting in a stack more money in that area. Pardon? Link Road is excluded from those figures because it's such a big, it just made the whole graph look a bit wobbly, but it sits in year 2, 3 and as well. So I've got a long, I don't like slides with lots of words, but this, I'll read this one out because this is our mindset. As our team were developing our long-term plan and developing our AMP, we were thinking, what is it, where we're at? Our long-term program has been developed with in a financially constrained environment where we understand affordability is a key factor. All activity requests have been based on the need to provide service safety and protect asset integrity. Where our funding request is outside the trend, we provide a step change in this LTP context dialogue so you can see where it is in the business case for transparency. The level of service has been held at the current standard in each activity unless otherwise stated, with intent to hold assets in a stable condition. This is not, we've had a big change in funding, but we have not, that reflects the changes we've been talking about earlier. Now I'm going to hand back to Rashir. This is our last slide. This is what we were intending, but right at the beginning of the presentation, we talked about what is this presentation for. Now, time to grapple with that and our questions.
So thank you very much, Mark and Rashir, for a very interesting presentation, which potentially could have been quite dry, but I found it quite interesting. I also note, and quickly...
Nothing's dry about this.
Well,
Jocelyn.
I know, it's your baby. I do note that in terms of the document that was sent last night, that you've actually basically picked out the key bits that are of interest to this committee, and I think it's been great that you've been able to highlight those. And so now I will pass on to questions from the committee. Councillor Warwick.
I was going to ask about the lifespan of the chip seal, but you said about 20 years, and the asphalt's about 25?
On average. A chip seal on a high intense road might only last 8 or 12. Yet we just did a chip seal last year on Kapiti Road outside the airport, and that would have been down for 22 years. So if you've got a really strong subgrade underneath, strong pavement, and not huge turning stresses, they can actually get quite good lives. Other times, not so much. But 20 for an assumption is good.
Okay. So have you done any kind of work on the difference in price over a long term for the two different things? I know you don't get the funding, but that would be interesting. So the other thing with that is it prone to more potholes, a chip seal rather than asphalt?
The different kind of potholes.
Easier to fix, or?
If you drive down Old Shadow 1 from the Otahanga to Lindale yesterday, you see how crews have turned up. They're there again today fixing those delaminations where the whole surface is ravelled and blown out in these quite big areas. and they're only so thick, but they're actually pretty ugly.
And is that chip seal or pop?
It's an asphalt.
Yeah, okay.
That's a 10-year-old asphalt. So we didn't get our 25 years out of that, and we're going to chip seal over that one. It's a rural road effectively up in there. It's a peri-urban environment. Whereas chip seals tend to get that bit of cracking and then start popping, and they can blow apart quite quickly. Yeah, different kind of potholes, but both are prone to it. Raumati Road, if you drive down there at the moment, we've got heaps of white paint out there. We've got a lot of repairs to do in there. It's cracking, and then one wet night it'll open up into quite a big pothole.
So you don't have any kind of drill down to the figures of what is more cost effective for the two with regard to longevity and potholes and fixing, and that would just be interesting. You probably don't have
They're both very similar. It comes down to the pavement underneath, Shelley, and keeping our roads waterproof, and both asphalt and chip seal do a good job of waterproofing when they're new.
Okay. My other thing is stimulating local employment. And I'm just wondering how our local, maybe smaller contractors are being supported to be able to put in those tenders. I know it's quite a risk, but it seems to them financially, but it seems like we're paying places, companies like Higgins and Downers to then make cream the top off and subcontract, which is costing us more. That's what it seems to me. And how are we supporting our own local companies to be able to bypass that costly process and be part of this work?
Getting the jobs to the right size is the first part of that. But NZTA, if we want their funding, they've actually got a bit of an issue with this. If it's directly locally, we say, hey, nobody outside the district can tender, they won't give us the money.
Oh,
so
no, I'm not saying just local,
so
more
we're saying
smaller.
if you're operating locally, if you've got a depot that's local, and at the moment, for example, Fulton Hogan don't, but Higgins do, we'll value that you're hiring local people and they're working here locally. We've got our main road maintenance contracts, and they're long term. They're 3 to 6 years long, and the capacity to be able to deliver that for your management structures and all that are actually quite complex. So we're saying to our tier 1 contractors, if you have a subcontract, we do want you to, we're expecting you to help to give your contract plans, to how you develop, and help support our tier 2 and 3s to be able to contract to tender in the future by developing their management skills, not just using them as labour.
Okay.
And that's what's quite fun about that asphalt and road marking. Having separating them out this time, this is the first chance for asphalt and road markers to actually tender directly for us and work for us.
Cool.
Outside that, we've got our upgrade type works. We've just had an experience. We put some speed humps out for the industry, and a true tier 3 contractor won that work, and it took a lot of work from our team to help them get through it. But we did get through it, and there's a lot of learnings on both parties for that, and we will continue to tender some of those smaller chunks of one-off work, so our tier 3s, local contractors can have a go at those kind of works too.
Cool.
Just to add to that, because it is a key thing that we've been thinking as to how we can improve. So we are, Mark and myself are going to the Contractors Federation regional meeting on the
next Tuesday
night to talk exactly about that, how local contractors can potentially partner up to a bit of a larger scale, and where are the areas of importance for us in terms of that tender, but also delivery process around the communication and scale and a whole lot of things that we'll be talking to them about. So that is to try to do exactly that, to get them to be more involved locally with this tender, but also other work that we put out through, not just through transport actually. So we'll be talking about all of infrastructure at that update.
Cool. And so my next question is, the PP2O revocation upgrade, why is the council paying for that when it's an NZTA thing? What part are we playing in that? I thought that was completely NZTA.
NZTA will pay for anything within the curb-to-curb safety related. It's the same structure as M2PP.
Okay.
and it's really just the town centre type upgrade work sitting outside the curb that we fund half of. Still get NZTA to fund half of that. And then there's a third category, which is landscaping and planting, which we pay 100% of that of. So NZTA, 100% funding for the curb to curb. We then apply the same FAR rate to anything outside the curb, which is the town centre type shared paths, and then planting and amenity sort of visual stuff is 100% council funded.
Okay, and when this does come back, the other document that's in it that was attached, do we just send feedback to you? Because I've got a bit of feedback, but it's not worth doing now, it's just general feedback.
I think we'll talk about that a bit later. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Warwick. So we'll just move on to Councillor Coe.
Yeah, look, I have 3 questions. One is, do we monitor air quality in certain key sites in the district, e.g. Kapiti Road? If we're looking at monitoring, at the level of emissions, I mean, that would be, seems to me that would be a good marker for how we're dealing with emissions across the district.
We don't. Greater Wellington have, I guess, a level of responsibility in terms of air quality. They have monitoring stations. I know they've got them in Wellington City. They may even have a mobile one, but we don't. It's quite technical. It's quite an expensive piece of kit to do that sort of work. Certainly, it's something we could look to see whether Greater Wellington would put one of their sites up here for a period of time to monitor it. But I guess we're driven by, there's the Regional Land Transport Program has a whole lot of targets in there for travel journey reduction and things like that. And we've also got then the asset management plan itself looks to where we can influence that, I guess, mode shift rather than so numerical measures rather than environmental, atmospheric or water quality. Those are sit currently outside of what we're responsible for, and we're relying either on Greater Wellington to monitor those or our stormwater team pick up water quality monitoring, freshwater quality monitoring, and there may be more of that monitoring work coming as part of either the Whaitua or global consenting that we're doing at the moment for stormwater. That quality is becoming more of an issue than quantity to some extent in terms of that space. But yeah, there are other areas of council that's picked up, and we don't directly do that currently through transport.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, one of the things we've talked about in the environmental space, doing a benchmarking, what is the state of our environment? I would have thought that some sort of measure of air quality at key points in the district would have been helpful for that.
I don't think the sensitivity of that monitoring, I think you'd find it would be very, very difficult to pick up you're talking about stuff like in Wellington City, down the bottom of, I think it's Willis Street, very intense localised area with not a lot of air movement. If you look at Kapiti Road in terms of the environment there, I don't think you'd be seeing enough to say, reduction of 5% is going to be very, very minor.
The wind's blowing that day.
Well, exactly. It'd be very hard, and then trying to link that to numbers of vehicle, I just think it would be a big step to suggest you could use that to monitor the impact of what we're doing around transport when you've got all these other metrics which are, if you stop people using cars, you can actually physically monitor those things and they give you a real result. So I don't think it would be something we would venture into lightly.
I think it would be a good question to follow up with GW, because if you don't know what you don't know.
That's right. Let's ask the question about whether it would be a good thing to do, and if so, why aren't they doing it? And just following on from that, my second question is, I did start wading through the report last night at some ungodly hour, but there was mention of Kapiti Road in there and how busy it's becoming, and we often get complaints about the busyness of Kapiti Road. I didn't really see an answer in the report in terms of how we're dealing with that over time. It was raised as an issue, but I didn't see any solutions.
It's probably worth the town centre. This is stepping back about 4 or 5 years ago. We did a piece of work that looked at Kapiti Road in terms of its strategic long-term focus. So there's a report that's on our website under the town centre program that shows the sections that would be opened up to. There was some conversation about double laning down past the airport, some other bits and pieces. So maybe we could make available the reference to those and have a look at whether we can
I just
loop
wonder
them
why
across.
it's not, or why isn't it in the asset management plan if you've talked about it?
Understanding the problem is a key part of that, and anecdotally, we hear it's busier. We hear it on Facebook. We've also just put some money into this activity management plan in the Wellington Transport Analytics Unit, which can do real work for us there and can model the changes. So we're investing in this 3-year training to understand the problem. So
Okay.
rather than trying to solve problems piecemeal without really understanding the whole context.
It might be useful to have some comment on that in the report, I would have thought, you know, just
Okay.
because it is one of those issues that's kind of out there in the community. They want to know what we're doing about it. So yeah, I think to make that point that we're researching it. And then the final thing is I've been toing and froing with the Mayor about what this committee has oversight of, and it turns out in February we agreed we'd have updates on regional transport. I'm wondering whether that needs to change, but also if it's split between us and social sustainability, I'm wondering whether you've pulled out the social, the connectivity bits for the Social Sustainability Committee to have a look at in parallel with this one, because if it's a dual responsibility, then I would have thought that was appropriate, but you might not have the right timing for that. So
No, so we haven't done that. Certainly, I understood the focus was on this committee, not splitting it up in terms of resourcing and splitting it into would be more work on top of what we're doing at the moment. Again, I wasn't aware that we were doing that.
Yeah, I think there's a lack of clarity around this, where transport fits into the committees. Because I mean, our chair wasn't obviously au fait with that either. So I think it's something we need to. Perhaps the Mayor might like to comment at this point.
Yeah.
So she's popped up there.
So the Mayor and I have had conversations around this, and I think maybe offline we can have some more conversations. And I suppose the question is whether or not the chair of the social sustainability has had those conversations as well. But I've actually welcomed, the environmental, the climate and environmental and resilience aspect of this presentation today.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So over to the Mayor.
It's quite relevant, yeah.
Yeah, I think this has more relevance to this committee than the other. I think the updates delegation means that we can just kind of have a general oversight if this has an implication for us locally on regional matters. I think this is more under the delegation of considering strategies, plans, and recommending to SOF, which is the first delegation of this committee. And it certainly, I think, fits better in this space. So I think it's an appropriate place for this to sit. But an ongoing conversation, what we bring to the two committees, and great to be having it.
Thank you, Mayor Janet. So now I move on to Christian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation and all the work that's gone into it and the expertise that you clearly bring to the table. Which brings me on to Sean said that you're off to a conference or a networking thing. Is there, how much are you able to bringing sort of best practice or share your own best practice back into the other councils about how you can write contracts and structure them in a way that enables whoever wins those contracts, but particularly local companies, to actually have the confidence to invest in lower carbon construction methodologies and materials and ways of working when they're actually doing that work? And I've got some follow-ups as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's about leadership. I was really up in Auckland. One of the companies up there is buying Cookie Monster. I didn't know what Cookie Monster was. It does away with 3 diesel-powered crushers and puts in 1 super electric crusher. So by our industry, I love the name, our industry having these conversations, all of us collectively providing leadership that we're wanting to move in these directions. We're seeing these big of investment by our larger contractors, and that's filtering down into our smaller. Wellington, we're likely to see a new hot mix plant being constructed in the next couple of years. It's going to be the first electric one in the region. I think there's one up in Auckland. This is a major change for us. Our contractors are getting the hint that actually how can we electrify our fleet Trucks at this moment are pretty average as far as we've got in New Zealand, but we're seeing the areas that they can do, they're in this game too. And the work Monique's doing, she'd probably add a comment too in this space. By us raising it as a question and talking about it as a wider team, we're making progress.
Okay. Because I was just thinking about those enabling things you could put into the longevity or the value of the contract or other things that then meant they had the confidence to go out and electrify. The next question moves on to the carbon intensity of the transport network once it's being used. And as I guess this crosses over with Fraser. And what is Council actually doing work to measure the consequential carbon footprint of our transport network?
I'm actually leaning down to VJ down the end there. Is that within the Wellington Analytics Unit brief? And I'm leaning across to Monique for a bit of guidance on that one too.
I don't believe, well, I don't think, we aren't as a council in that space. But what do you mean by monitoring? Emissions as a proxy of the number of the fleet across the entire district?
Yeah,
what
so,
that emits
I mean,
in terms of,
it's like building you can go all out to build a car with low emissions, and then the one you've made is actually a V8 that it's very high emissions in use. So it would stand to reason that with the mix you have between fossil fuel powered vehicle use as opposed to other modes or electrified, and the design and operation of the system is going to induce emissions. And you were saying about, it was just mentioned, I don't assume it's a particularly firmed up plan to double lane down past the airport, but you'll induce demands and make congestion worse if you do that. It'll be very expensive and it won't solve the problem because double lane doesn't work. So what consideration is going into network design to actually reduce demand and reduce its carbon intensity as it's used by our community? That's the question.
Monique's got a response, but I would also point towards the State Highway Revocation and the town centre work in Paraparumu in terms of design, which reduces, in itself makes that certainly...
No, but I see having the public transport hub and having the cycle lanes, but can we quantify that to, actually measure and monitor that and then learn how we can sort of more widely apply that across the district as part of an emissions reduction plan for community emissions?
Monique would probably answer that, but we do have a number of we monitor traffic with our vehicle count equipment, so we do monitor traffic movements across the entire network and a lot of strategic places, so that will give us some of that background data, but I'm sure Monique's got...
Yeah, so kia ora, ko Monique England toko ingoa. Hey, so yeah, the consequential impacts, I can't speak to the network design, but upstream emissions, and we've set our district-wide emissions target. So part of that is then looking at the whole breadth of that upstream 3 to 6. And I guess the more we gather the data, which is where we're at, is gathering all that information, and then we can make some choices as we go through. So embodied carbon as well. We had done a study into how much the transport hub, for example, how much embodied carbon was projected on a page. So starting to gather that information, we're looking at what that will look like going forward. So we're gathering the information currently in our team.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to Mr. Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, team, for the work you've been doing. I think mine's loosely related to, and might have been answered off the back of Liz's and Christian's questions. I haven't previously questioned the assumption that we've got 52% of our emissions come from our transport, and it sounds like a lot of our monitoring and measuring processes are sort of in its infantile stage. So I'm wondering if it's, how accurate do we know that figure, and how can we actually ascertain that we're actually meeting our targets from that?
So that figure came from a report done by, was it GHT? AECOM. So it was, and it was driven, I think, from the Regional Land Transport program. So the actual Regional Land Transport Plan, if you have a look at it, has a significant amount of data in there, and it also has a significant program associated with that in terms of monitoring as well. And you can go back and look historically at a lot of that information, both at a district level and regional level in terms of vehicle movements, people on trains, people on buses, that sort of. So there is a significant piece of work that happens in that space that we're part of, and I mentioned our the monitoring that we do in terms of, so we do cycle monitoring through Fraser's area and transport. We also do the vehicle on the road monitoring as well, and again have a significant amount of data there that we use. So yeah, there's a combination of vehicle movement, people mode shift, people not driving in cars, what are they doing in terms of getting to public transport, then that emissions component, I think is derived from the volume of traffic. So and modelling. Yeah, so you can done by models. Yeah, so you can model how much emission comes from a standard car, and then you apply that, the statistics in terms of how many vehicle movements per day are being generated. So you can calibrate that though from data that regional council have in terms of air quality, but again, I think the science linking, again, if you're sticking to real numbers in terms of vehicles, you know what's coming out of the tailpipe. That gives you a very good indicator in terms of volume, and that what happens in the environment then is a little bit outside of the scope of what we deliver. But
how often is that model revisited, and when can we expect an updated number and progress from that?
Monique might be. I'm not sure how often. There's some targets in that Regional Land Transport Plan.
So the one we're looking at with AECOM, had been a report delivered by AECOM. Greater Wellington leading the procurement of a subsequent one. And so the current report, I can forward you the contact for that. There should be a link on our website to the Greater Wellington Regional Council report. But we're just going through procurement to look at that next updated model, so we can get our, refine the information, I guess, from that district-wide section of transport emissions.
Would you also be able to forward me the actual paper itself? The AECOM paper.
Sorry, that one's on public, so it's on the Greater Wellington Regional Council website. I'll forward that contact.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Now, Councillor Hanford.
Cool, thank you, Madam Chair. Probably quite a brief one, and just echoing the thanks. And it really showed the kind of extensive nature of the network, just all of the different sort of elements to it, and how much you've got to keep your eyes across. So really appreciate that. You mentioned, Sean, that we are measuring sort of active transport use, which is really, really good, and wanting to get a sense of the extent of that. Maybe it's more a question through Fraser, so happy to take that offline. But my main question was around the connection between the measurement of how much people are travelling using active modes, and then connecting that back to how we resurface. So if we know that, for example, asphalt is better for cyclists and there's a route that's being heavily used by cyclists, we've got that understanding. How does that inform how it is resurfaced? And is there that connection between, just wondering how we approach that. In terms of because you talked about the sort of amenity value, the use, is that only use by cars, or is that broader use by people travelling actively?
When we get that level of knowledge, we're already talking about it, but it didn't form a high enough focus for presenting today. We've got one Gypsy site this year we're going to do. Is quite a interesting one. It's on Marine Parade. It's going to be a little bit of community focus. Already we're talking about we put the first layer of chip on. It's quite a big chip. It's quite bony. Put a second layer on. It smooths out. But outside the edge lines, we don't need that strength. So let's just put the smoothest one on straight away. So already we're talking about that. There's a product called slurry that's in the market. We're really struggling to get it down here in Wellington because there's not enough demand for the contractors to set up the plant here. But effectively it's a sand mix that you can put into a chip seal and blind it off, and it's economic. So those are the sort of, we'll look at different technologies rather than jumping from chip seal to asphalt to still get a economic surface without the big cost.
So I have a question, and it's probably follows on from Councillor Hanford. So my question was, so obviously you've got chip seal and you've got asphalt, and I think you might have just touched on my question is there anything in between or completely other products? Like I know in the States they use a lot of concrete type products, and I suppose on top of that it's about, to me, asphalt and chip seal aren't particularly good environmentally in terms of production. I don't know what these other ones are like as well, but looking at the bigger picture and what other alternatives there are out there that we could use here, which would actually provide a far better surface and would be better on the environment.
The concrete idea you've raised in there, well, that's the next tier up again. Chip seal, asphalt. Concrete's the tier one, the highest cost stuff. It also has quite a high emission because of the cement stuff puts a whole lot of stuff off. It's carbon dioxide, isn't it?
Concrete is up there in terms of the from an environmental point of view. I'm not sure if it's as bad, but it's certainly there's a significant amount of emissions come from concrete due to the makeup of the product.
And it's actually very expensive as well. I remember back in India they do concrete pavements for kilometers and kilometers. It's very strong, good for when pothole formation is not there. But again, it is very expensive as well.
I know. Well,
and I don't think in New Zealand we can actually.
Yeah, and the expressways over there, and you're going fast, and about every half a second, clunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but anyway, so back to what are the other products?
What else is in between is a great product. I show you the first flow chart. Should we use chip seal or asphalt? Then once you choose asphalt or chip seal, you move to another flow chart, and which kind of asphalt do you use? So in the cul-de-sac head where the trucks are smooth around, we'll just use the dense grade 7, which does the job there, and it's skinnier and it's cheaper and it does the job. Whereas on a high-speed environment road like the expressway, you go to an OG path that's all opened up, so the noise sucks into it, the water sucks into it, you don't get the spray back, and then you'd use the SMAs on the roundabouts. There's a whole range of it with different costs and different thicknesses and different environmental impact. Same with chip seals. We tend to use the lower risk grade 2 coats, but we also use there's a few other different pieces in there. But what else is there is the good question you've got. And this is where we start talking about the slurries and things like that. But there's not enough demand actually for contractors to jump there. We did a bit of workshopping with our region. All the local authorities in the Wellington region got together and said, hey, could we do a joint slurry contract? And everyone puts their projects in to get a bit of work in here. Hasn't come to fruition yet, but we are talking about it at a regional level to broach that question.
Thank you for that. So I think, sometimes looking outside the box, it solves a lot of problems, and it makes it a far better outcome for the environment and our climate, I suppose, emissions as well. So we've come to the end of our questions here, and so thank you very much for the presentation today. Obviously, the plan was sent out late yesterday, and when you actually delve into that, there's a lot more detail about many of the topics that you've discussed today. And so in our recommendation is actually to endorse this plan. It's my understanding that this is going to come to SOF in early September. So I'm just wondering, some comments from the committee about whether you would be happy to note this, the plan today, and then in the interim to provide any questions to the SOF committee. So so there's general agreement to that? Well, I suppose Sophie is the chair of that soft committee, so directly to her, but I think it would be useful to include the other members of this committee because there might be similar questions that are coming up if people do have any questions. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, you're the deputy chair as well. So I will move a change to the recommendation that this committee notes the asset and transport activity management plan rather than endorsing it. So do I have a seconder for that? Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favour? Those against? The motion is passed. Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation and for obviously the detail and work that is in that that plan. And I certainly encourage everyone to read it because it's actually very, very good. Yeah. Yeah. It is, yeah. So thank you. And so now, given that, I think we'll take a 10-minute break. Thank you. Thank you.